So this class is for 11A. We left off the middle of Yud Aleph, if you recall. So the third to the last line of the page 294 in the Shulchan Aruch that most of us are using, but it is which is in Siman Tzadik, Halacha Yud Aleph, again pretty much towards the end of Al-Eisen Sifri Divrei Hayamim Sheyetzim Hen Inyanim Musa V'Yirah Shamayim Kigin Sifri Yesifun Mechayitzavai Afilu Ksuvim B'Lashon Laz Mutar Likreisim Afilu B'Shabbos. Let's translate it. Firstly, those books of history which you could extract from them matters of Musar and Yirah Shamayim. Yirah Shamayim literally means fearing heaven, fearing Hashem. Musar is again mannerism in way we conduct ourselves between our Creator and our fellow man, our fellow human being. So when you can extract from these books matters of Musar and Yirah Shamayim, then it's okay to read on Shabbos. And he gives an example, Sefer Yesifun, which was a certain Sefer, this was its name. And again, it's something which is not that popular, but it is a known book. If you think about it, today would be, like for example, they have, I don't know, it's not exactly the same, because here it's Divrei Hayamim of history books, but these history books is there to extract all the important messages which from our history we could learn and follow matters of Musar and Yirah Shamayim, in other words, fearing Hashem, doing what we are meant to do as Yidden. So the overall is Divrei Hayamim, which is overall these are books of history, but it's not just there to tell us history, even Jewish history, but it's much more than just Jewish history. It's history. This book, for example, is an example, Sefer Yesifun. This is a book which pulls out and brings out from all these periods of history matters of Musar and fearing Hashem. So therefore you're permitted to read on Shabbos. Now, really this is very similar to this which we left off in the very last class about the novels which we're familiar with. We mentioned a few famous publishers, like I say, the Art Scroll, Feldheim, Jerusalem Press. There's many of them today. And just to mention a few, this is very similar. And because it's about, if it's about truth or fiction, in the end of the day, this is different periods of our history, which these books are written on. But namely, you read through them, they just are not there. They're just not only to just mention what happened in this period of time, what happened in that period of time, which would be just like Jewish history, but namely, they try to pull out the best of these characters which play themselves out in these stories and these novels, which acted with Yirah Shamayim, with fearing Hashem, following a mitzvah, Mesidus Nefesh for a mitzvah, self-sacrifice for a mitzvah, for doing chesed, staying away from something that Hashem says not to do. And those publishers, they try to highlight and underscore these points, so when you read through them, you're not reading particularly a sefer or a mimer or something which directly speaks about Yirah Shamayim, but you can infer, you extract a lot of Yirah Shamayim from these books. And I mentioned last week, I don't want to say this to just repeat this again, that this is what these books are all about in the end of the day. They're meant to be sold naturally to someone writings and uses his or her imagination, and for them it's a parnasa. All these things are true in the publishers themselves, but namely these publishers, they have the objective to take these books and it should become inculcated into the Jewish home, that which is the advantage from a certain perspective and point of view, not only to extract all this information from something which is directly Torah, like in our world, a Sicha, a Maimer, a Halacha in Shulchan Aruch, which there it's black and white, all this information, like in matters of Yerushalayim. This is what the Shulchan Aruch is all about, to tell us how to fear Hashem. In what way can we fear Hashem? This which we are meant to stay away from, and this we're meant to make the effort to do, because it's incumbent upon us to do. We have an obligation to do it. But the advantage of these books, in the end of the day, is to bring it into our hearts and minds in a way, through a story, through a narrative. And again, they have a certain advantage, because here you're reading like real life, how it played out in this and this person, or this is part of history, and this is this family, and this is in this period of our history. And you see how so many characters within the book, they conducted themselves in a manner of submitting himself to Shulchan Aruch, to Hashem, again with Yerushalayim, and again this mannerism between them and their Creator, with Hashem, and then with them and their fellow friend. And you read it in a book, one way or another, has a different type of impact from a certain perspective. There's an advantage of that, because you see it as it plays out in real life. So this is similar to the story. This is similar to the Sefer Yisifun. It's Divrei Hayomim. It's history, but the Sefer Yisifun, in the end of the day, it's meant to, and the one who wrote this Sefer wasn't only there just to tell us about the history, it's about also to extract these matters of Musar and Yerushalayim. So therefore you're allowed to read it on Shabbos. As we mentioned before, it's very similar to these noted books, and therefore it is permitted. And he says, I feel like meaning to say, even it's not it's not written in Hebrew, in Lashon Chodesh, rather, it's not written in Yiddish, it's written in the common language that we speak. But because in the end of the day, it's not about the language, it's about the information. And because this information has content, has true content of significance, of Yiddish significance, and therefore Motul Kresim, I feel that Shabbos you're allowed to read him even on Shabbos. Again, basically this is where we emphasize in simply these contemporary books we spoke about, and we just mentioned them again, that it is permitted. But if you recall, we pointed this out, and this is the way the Halacha concludes over here, Omikol Mokim, nonetheless, Ein Laharbis Bahem. Don't increase in reading these books because they're permitted. Just because they're permitted, that doesn't say that we're just go ahead and take the Shabbos and just grab 4 or 5 books. You know, there's always the temptation not to leave out anything, to read from cover to cover and get into your room Shabbos morning and come out Shabbos late afternoon, because the Halacha says you're allowed to read these books, and especially you do walk away one way or another with matters of Musar and Yerushalayim. He says, no, don't increase in reading them, because in the end of the day, that's not really what Shabbos is all about. Shabbos is Shabbos Lashem Alekecha. So you have to start with, no one's going to eat some dessert or establish their meal on dessert. Dessert, okay, you want to have a certain delight, but you ought to eat the bread, and you ought to eat the protein, this which contributes to your physical health. And then on top of that, you want to eat something delightful. It's okay, but you don't establish your meal on dessert or things that are just delightful to eat. And the same thing, Shabbos is meant to be Shabbos Lashem Alekecha. And it's a day which has to be devoted to Hashem, starting from a very meaningful davening, to take more time. And therefore, for that matter, the davening of Shabbos is more expansive, as we know, just because it's a day that Hashem wants us. This is the whole point of Shabbos, that we take one day and we separate ourselves from all our weekday occupations, and we get involved in this which is inherently holy, inherently divine, like davening, learning. Even again, the meal is expansive physically, but it's meant to be expansive spiritually, to invest. In the middle of the week, you don't have time to sing a good niggin from beginning till the end, and appreciate the what behind the niggin, what the message the niggin sends, an elevation which usually comes in as a result of singing a niggin, especially singing it with other people. Can't do that all the time in the middle of the week. Shabbos is a time that you can, and therefore it's meant you should. You're meant to do so. And if it's a good Dvar Torah and a good story and a good niggin, together with the expansive meal, which is again part of the Shabbos, because of Karasol the Shabbos Einik, it's supposed to be not only spiritually pleasurable, but also physically pleasurable. But in the end of the day, it's meant to primarily be the Shabbos L'Hashem Elokecha, and again with the original structure of Hashem Elokecha, which is again learning Torah and davening and thinking more about Pirush HaMilos and everything we do on Shabbos. Again, it's the meal, it's the learning, it's the davening, it's the shir, it's the getting together and so on. But if you have a little more time and you want to rest and you want to unwind, yes, it's okay to take one of these books and go into a room for an hour, let's say, and read the book. You could even read it a little more, maybe even cover to cover if you're a good reader. But in the end of the day, don't make Shabbos about in reading these books. Again, even there's a positive dimension to them. Ein lahar beis bahem, don't increase them, which just really is a thread which follows, if you recall, time and again we have this same expression, ein lahar beis bahem, which Halacha says that even this which is permissible, do not increase. Halacha says there's certain exceptions here. Here you can say this like that, in Halacha Daled, in Halacha Hey, and in Halacha Vav, as an example. But it does say everywhere where it says you're allowed to, it says don't increase, because it's just a permission which is given to you. This case maybe you can say a bit more, because in the end of the day, these readings do contribute one way or another, consciously, subconsciously, maybe subconsciously, in a very positive way. But nonetheless, you can take the whole Shabbos and increase in reading these books. That's what the end this halacha concludes. That's the way this halacha concludes. And then we go on to halacha Yud Beis. Osur lamed b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to measure on Shabbos. Eizer davar, anything. If it's something you need to measure, Eli im kain, to the exclusion if it's l'tzarech mitzvah, it's for the sake of a mitzvah. So really, if you look at this halacha, you read it just as it is. It seems like you shouldn't do it, to one exclusion, when it's for the sake of a mitzvah. Then you're allowed to. In other words, you shouldn't measure, but if it's for the sake of a mitzvah, you're allowed to measure. So let's just go from the last part of the halacha. This is the end of this halacha Yud Beis. That simply, for example, we know that to make Kiddush, there is a measurement, how much wine we need in order to make Kiddush. So this is, making Kiddush is a mitzvah. Making Kiddush on wine is also a mitzvah. If you recall, we mentioned that Hashem wants us to do something special when Shabbos comes in and do something special when Shabbos goes out, which is towards the end of Shabbos. But the Chachamim added that we should do it with wine. So making Kiddush, we make Kiddush on wine. We make Havdalah on wine. Because again, even though that part of the Kacheyu Biknisosi Vitziyosi, sanctifying the Shabbos, upon its entry and it's upon its leaving, is more the Deiraisa, according to a few opinions. The wine, the particular manner of doing it is through wine, but nonetheless, it is a mitzvah. So, and we know that it's supposed to be a certain amount of wine in the cup when we make Kiddush. That's a mitzvah. So because it's supposed to be a certain amount of wine, a certain amount of ounces, so you're allowed to measure this measurement in order to make Kiddush in the right manner. But you're measuring, and you're not allowed measuring on Shabbos, but for a mitzvah you're allowed to. That's a simple halacha. But if you look a bit deeper, you will notice that there's another condition over here. He uses the words, but you have to extract it from this first few words of the halacha Yud Beis. Osur lamed b'Shabbos, you're not allowed to measure on Shabbos, eizer davar, anything, imu l'tzarech. If it's something that you need, that itself says that there could be a way that even if it's not for a mitzvah, but you don't really care, even something is being measured, it's also fine. Quick example. All the cups, Shabbos afternoon, all the cups are already dirty, you had guests and so on, and you're done with the disposable, just as an example. It's just lying there in the cupboard is a measuring cup. And you're thirsty. So you're allowed to use that measuring cup to drink a cup of water, even though inevitably, any place you're going to fill it up, it's going to reach a certain line, and that line is a measurement, is an indication for a particular measurement. So maybe you shouldn't use it because one way or another, you're inevitably measuring this amount of water. Again, you're trying to, this which you're trying to drink, which in this case, as we just, again, an example we just gave, you're trying to drink a cup of water, you're measuring the amount of water because you're using a measuring cup. So it says a half a cup, it says a quarter cup, it says the quarter plus 2-3 lines. Any way you're going to fill up that cup, you are inevitably measuring. So are you allowed to do it? Maybe not. No, but he says the words imu l'tzarech. You could infer from this that this in itself tells you that It's only if you really care for that measurement. If you don't care for that measurement, and it happens to be that's the only cup on the shelf, and in the end of the day you are measuring, that's fine. Because to you, you don't care if it's a half a cup, a quarter cup, maybe you want a lot of water, so you'll fill it up more, but it's not the particular measurement that it's on the cup that is for which would be the reason why you're using the cup. Not at all. That's the only cup you have. Therefore, it's fine. As opposed to if you're interested in the measurement, you want to drink only a half a cup for whatever reason. And so even there's no other cups, but because you're using that, when you use that measuring cup, you're using it with an interest that the measuring cup should pretty much tell you where's the half a cup, where's the half a cup mark. Or you're making a salad, for example, and you know that you have to put in a quarter of whatever whatever the substance is into the salad. So you have an interest. Not all the time, by the way, we make a salad. The dressing that sometimes we know without even measuring, and we just put it in, and somewhat, especially those who are always in the kitchen, they don't always have to use a measuring cup. But if you're not always making that salad, and you know that there's a certain measurement of that dressing, or in order to make the dressing as an example, you're not allowed to. So here you're using the same measuring cup, and the halacha would say you're not allowed to use it. Why? Because you have an interest in using that measuring cup, as opposed to leilat tzarech, which means you don't have an interest in using that cup per se. It's just there's no other cup. So even again, inevitably you are measuring, but it's fine because it's leilat tzarech. And then comes, if it's tzarech mitzvah, that other condition, then even if you're formally looking for the accurate measurement, the exact measurement. In this case, the case we gave, in order to make the kiddush on the exact amount of wine needed to make kiddush, then it's fine. Even though your objective is yes to measure, but it's associated with a mitzvah. There's other mitzvahs also, again, would need a particular specific measurement, which is also permitted on Shabbos, but we gave one example. So in the end of the day, really, there's two conditions in the way the measuring cup is permitted to use on Shabbos. One, you don't care for the measurement, as opposed to if you do care for the measurement, and then even if you do care for the measurement, and you're looking out for the measurement, but if you're measuring, if the measurement is associated with a mitzvah, then it's okay, which is again follows the whole pattern of this mimtzei cheftzcha, that it's always overridden by a mitzvah. Lamid b'Shabbos, to measure on Shabbos, is nora deiraisa, nora derabanan, and therefore it's overridden by a mitzvah. Had it been a derabanan, so then it would never be overridden by a mitzvah. So which tells us, so first of all, we don't have to look far. This halacha is in this siman, which speaks about mimtzei cheftzcha, nor deraisa, nor derabanan. Again, we spoke many times. And this is what this halacha sif is, as we see in the title. Dina sis chavatza b'lei malacha. There's no deraisa nor derabanan, and this is part of it. So we know right away this is part of the mitzvah cheftzcha. But also we learn, we can infer that this is part of the mitzvah cheftzcha category of prohibition because it's clearly overridden by a mitzvah. If it was a derabanan, it would not be overridden by a mitzvah, as we spoke a few times. Bimkaim Seida, we'll do Yud Gimel, we'll do one more halacha. Muter ledaber bitzrachov beinim Yisrael beinim Eved Yechav. When it comes to a loss, which usually it's a serious monetary loss, when he speaks about Seida, it's usually about a monetary loss. You're allowed to talk about your personal needs, may be with a Yid, may be with a Goy. In other words, even this which with the halacha itself, previous halachas noted to you that you should not talk about it because it's your personal needs. And again, it variates between the halachas we learned in halacha aleph. If someone, for example, looks into his personal or talks to somebody or makes it quite very indicative that he's dealing with his personal needs. If you remember someone passing by we spoke about window shopping or going out to find something that he wants to rent after Shabbos, if you recall, from that, or from the other examples we gave, or matters of business, where someone's going, which these are all a lot. This is the tzrachav, this is the personal needs, what Hashem says, im tashiv mishabbos raglecha. You're meant to remove yourself, mimtzei cheftzcha, from finding your needs. Again, b'Shabbos Reglechos, one Mimtzei Chefzecha, which is again the overall category of these halachas. You have to tashiv, step back from pursuing your needs, which again, we shouldn't be talking about it again, which you could extract from many of these halachas. When it comes to an important monetary loss, you're allowed to talk with about your needs, maybe with a yid, maybe with a goy. Now, what does that mean? For example, there is some mistake, for example, in an order. There's some mistake in a calculation. And the individual who made the mistake is leaving right after Shabbos overseas. And you won't see him for a long time. And this is merchandise that you need to start selling right after Shabbos. So if you won't tell him about the correction, for him to make that correction, maybe in a calculation or maybe in the merchandise which you bought, wrong merchandise, or the amount wasn't this which you ordered or so, if you won't tell him, you'll take a big hit, a big monetary hit. So you're allowed telling him on Shabbos, maybe the Gentile, which you happen to see, which is part of this error, or maybe the Yid, one in Shul, he's leaving for a month, and that month is where you're going to need to sell. That's the time you had in mind to sell this merchandise. And to straighten up with that calculation would be very important, because if not, you'll be hit with a very significant monetary loss. So are you allowed to tell the guy in Shul, doesn't mean part of davening chas v'shalom, but just right away he's leaving Shul, you made a mistake, you brought me the wrong merchandise, so that calculation was wrong. If he's leaving right after Shabbos, and you won't be able to catch him, won't be able to reach him, especially in the yesteryears when, technology wasn't there, you can't throw him an email, you can't throw him a text or WhatsApp, and you won't see him for a month, and as such, you'll take a important monetary loss. You're allowed to quickly tell him, even though it's chefzecha, it's your needs, and there's no particular mitzvah here. The problem is that you're dealing with a pseida, a great monetary loss. You're allowed to throw him a word and say, there was a wrong calculation. You sent me the wrong merchandise. For him to immediately, Matzah Shabbos, straighten things out before he goes on his journey. And again, it could be the Gentile that you happen to meet, and someone who comes around, or you just met up with him on Shabbos, and he's leaving town. You're not going to catch him after Shabbos. And if you won't mention to him, you will lose a lot of money. You're allowed to do so. That's the end of Halacha Yud Gimel, and this is the end of this part of Halacha Tzadik. If you remember in the title, we said Halacha Tzadik, the Simon Tzadik rather, deals with two separate subjects, and they're divided. And once you finish with one, the new one begins. Simply, it's organized. Once you finish with the first part of the title, then begins the second, and the rest of the halachas begin with the second subject. If you remember, the second subject was about doing a malacha through a Gentile, the prohibition, which, by the way, is a d'Rabbanan prohibition, because from here he doesn't begin. When it comes to the doing a malacha through a Gentile, that's not Mimtzei Chefzecha, that's a clear d'Rabbanan, as we're going to see. It's not because it's in this simon, it's a Mimtzei Chefzecha type prohibition. To the contrary, this is where this subject ends. This is the conclusion of this subject. The next subject begins a new topic, doing a malacha through a Gentile, which is clearly a d'Rabbanan, which is naturally more grave. Even it's in this simon, but the title is, this simon is Dinas Siyas Chafatza B'lei Malacha, which is the first part, doing your doings without a malacha. That's the first part, which we just concluded now. And then umelacha de'akum, and doing malacha through a Gentile. Why did he put it in the same siman? I'm not sure, because it's very distinctive, very different, even categorically. Till now it's Mimtzei Chefzecha prohibition, and now he begins a new prohibition, which is clearly a d'Rabbanan, which is the prohibition of telling a guy to do a malacha. But again, he had his reason. Maybe we'll learn more of it. We'll come to the realization why he put it together, but we should know that in the end, at least in the onset, it's two separate subjects. And to tell a malacha to tell a Gentile to do a malacha for you is not a Mimtzei Chefzecha prohibition. It is clearly a d'Rabbanan. We'll get to it. Very important subject, because a lot of stuff that just because of custom, call the guy in, tell them this, tell them that. We have to. These are important halachas to gain the clarity, and a lot of stuff that we'll learn about. But as Hashem will realize that we have to modify the way we conduct ourselves when something goes off in our home. It's the oven, it's the light. How do we deal with the goyim? We're going to learn about it. But this is the conclusion of the first part of this Mimtzei Chefzecha category, which is Din Asiyas Chafatza B'lei Melacha, doing your doings, your deeds, without a melacha, nor a deraisa, nor a derabanan. Stay safe and sound.